This conference will now be recorded.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ali Allah, madad farma. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Yari Mother to all friends. So we have gathered here to study our book, Proof of Imamat by Allama Munzai, and we are on the chapter of Principle of Excellence. So we are going to study the point number 3, evidence of 4 elements.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Point number 3, evidence of the 4 elements. The 4 elements are earth, water, air, and fire, and they too are in ranks. The earth is in the lowest rank and is the most dense. Water, which has surrounded the earth, is more subtle than the earth. Air surrounds the water and is more subtle than it. And finally, fire surrounds the air and is more subtle than it, and has the characteristics of the sun in light and heat. Thus fire, which is in the form of electricity too, surpasses the rest of the elements in excellence. The evidence of elements from the universe is like a verse which by its meaning demonstrates that in the world of religion too there is a rank which is both manifest and hidden like electricity. This rank in the world of religion is that of the Imam and his imamat, in which there is the light of mercy, as well as the fire of wrath, just like fire and lightning. This verse of the external world explains those verses of the Quran in which it is mentioned that Hazrat Musa saw a fire, and 70 selected men of his community were struck by lightning and other events related to fire and lightning.
Subhanallah, subhanallah. Looks like a pretty simple paragraph, but it is in so much depth. So first, what we need to understand that there are 4 elements which are actually mentioned by our Dais and Hujjatan. Sayyidina Pir Nasir Khusro also talks about it, that these 4 elements, we are looking at it comparatively. Definitely earth being more dense than water, and the whole earth is surrounded by the water, and then air surrounds the water, and in its comparatively they become more lighter and subtle. And then surely there is a fire which has a heat and light, the way we see it in the sun too. So let us just understand first these four elements. Earth being the most dense, it is visible, tangible. When we look at water, it is lighter, again visible, but it takes the shape of its mold. Water itself, wherever it is, it takes the shape of its mold. Takes the form of the vessel it is in. We can see through it, it is transparent, it has weight, it takes the space. Whereas when we compare water to air, air is much more lighter than water. We cannot see air as per se. It is transparent, we cannot see it. But when we talk of fire, it is the most subtle form out of all four. It is transparent and definitely it can burn because it has heat, it has light in it. And we do use fire as electricity. So when we look at the electricity, we may see the light, but we don't see the electricity. It is hidden. It is due to the electricity, there is a light and we can read and we can see. But it is because of the electricity which is hidden there. Why are we talking like that? Because each element has its own function. Each element has its own function. And we are studying the principle of excellence. So fire is the topmost element, which is the most excellent out of all four. So what we are saying that the way we've been studying in our tariqa, everything is in darja. Everything is in darja. Similarly, when we talk of these elements, that is also in darja, and one is the excellent out of this. And very beautifully here we read when we talk of fire, which has heat, it can burn us, it can also give us light so we can see. And it has been related to sun. Sun in our world is the one who gives us light and heat. But when we take the world of religion, Imam is that sun who gives the heat and the light. In the form of his nur, he is the one who nourishes us. We grow because of his light. We are able to see the path because of his light. And with his nur, we are able to elevate ourselves. When we talk of Imam, there is a nur which is hidden, but his guidance are manifested. His nur is hidden, but his guidance is manifested. Within the guidance, we can find the nur. In other words, what we are saying that in the world of humanity, Imam has come to this world as a human. He is in a human form. But his nur, his darja is above all the human. He is the perfect man. Imamat is which? There is the light of mercy. It is the rahmat, nur-e-rahmat ki barish. He rains the light of mercy on us. As well as there is a fire too. Just like fire and lightning. Now what does fire means here when we say fire of wrath? Remember, we have been talking about fire actually is in relationship to being ignorant. Those who are ignorant, they are in darkness. When they are darkness, they burn in the fire of their own doings. For example, when we take the example of hereafter through the reference of 57 by 12 and 13, where Mominins will be there, and those who did not follow Imam, they will be there, and there'll be door in between them, and they will ask the Mominins, please share from your light. In other words, it says, now we know what we were supposed to do. Please send us back, so we will do what we were supposed to do. Meaning that their realization, their Batni eyes, when they open up, when they can see the rutba of the Imam, and those Mu'minins who follow the Imam became exalted and close to the Nur of Imam. Just that realization, that knowledge will burn them in the fire. Fire of wrath, meaning they will be far, far away from the Imam. But they will be able to see that Imam is the Imam-e-Barhaq, and the purpose of the life was to have the recognition of the Imam. So this is the light of mercy for those who follow the Imam, follow his guidance. They live in the same world, but they are in the category of receiving the light as mercy. Whereas this same light can burn someone who is not in the mercy circle of Imam. They're out of that circle. It is Imam's bayat, it is Imam's hidayat, Imam's farman bardari keeps the mu'mineen in the circle of mercy. And then this verse of the external world explains those verses of the Quran in which it is mentioned that Hazrat Musa saw a fire and 70 selected men of his community were struck by lightning and other events related to fire and lightning. So this actually relates to Surah Araf, chapter 7, verse 155. But before we go there, let me tell you one more understanding. That when we take the example of earth, earth allegorically is also used for mustajib, the one who realizes that they don't have knowledge and they want to start seeking knowledge. What they are seeking, they are wanting to elevate themselves. To get what? Water. Water is allegory for true knowledge. When earth is mixed with the water, what happens? Now that earth can also be molded. Molding can only happen to water. Whatever vessel the water is, it gets shapes, takes the shape of that vessel. When we make ice cubes, the water becomes, square shaped ice cubes. But it was water originally which had no shape. It was fluid. But when we put it in the tray, it becomes the ice cube. Similarly, when the earth, meaning a moment, generic term, that moment says, I don't know and want to become a student, I do not know, I want to learn, meaning they open themselves up with humility, no matter who they are in the physical world, whatever profession or grade or rank they have, they say, I don't know. And it is not an easy thing to do. It is not an easy task to say, I don't know. It requires true humility to become humble and say, you know what, I really don't know this knowledge. And as soon as they say that, just by saying that, just by accepting that, Maula's mercy come to them. They literally enter into the light of mercy. How? Because there is a rain. Rain of what? Knowledge. As soon as they start receiving that knowledge that earth can be molded, now it has become clay. You can make shapes out of it. And when I talk like that, I hope you recall that in the story of Adam, Adam was molded 40 days. Adam was molded for 40 days. It says in Quran, he was fashioned, he was molded in the 40 mornings. We do know the ta'wil of it. We're not talking about the ta'wil, we are just talking about the example to understand these 4 elements. That there was an earth which when it receives the water, it becomes moldable. That moment who becomes mustajib starts shaping up, starts becoming the farman bardar of Imam in its true sense. Jamaat is whole Jamaat. But there are few within the Jamaat who will say, oh, I don't know and I want to learn this knowledge. They will become those mustajibeen following the path of Adam. Adam started his journey as mustajib from the Jamaat. So those mustajibeen will say, oh, I don't know. They will receive the water, they'll be molded. When they start molding, meaning they start receiving the knowledge, then they start molding themselves with zikr, ibadat, girya, uzari, ilmu, amal, they continue to walk on the path. What happens to them? Their purification of their deeds, their soul becomes lighter, like air. It is so light that it can fly. It can fly. And eventually, gradually, the darja, step by step, elevates and they become like nur. Fire is also light. It is also nur. They become the nur. So in darjat, for a moment, the highest most rank is of fire. That is why we hear this story in Adam's story, that Azazel was made of fire. And he says, how can I bow down? Because Adam is made of mitti. He's of a lower rank and I am from fire. But Allah says, what I know, you do not know. Meaning that even at reaching that highest rank, if a person, if a Mu'min and Sadiq forgets the lesson of humility, they can come down. The test never ends until we are physically dead. This world, we have come to this world as a test. We have to stay humble. That is why every farman of Baitul Khiyal, Imam will talk about humility. Because Imam loves us so much, Imam wants us to remember humility is the key to success. We are no one, we are nothing, we are nachis. Then only we can elevate. Meaning that we are so humble. Inside and outside, in our thoughts, in our actions, we are humble. Then only we can reach to the level of fire. In other words, we are saying that Adam had reached to that level. But he was so humble that Azazel could not even recognize that potential. He saw him as earth. But when Allah says, I know you do not know, I know what you know not, that Adam had elevated his ranks so much so that he became the Natik, he became the vicegerent of Allah. So in other words, I hope that this beautiful evidence of four elements we are able to understand. Those who are seeking knowledge are mustajib. The journey of the student starts from learning, becoming mustajib. And when they continue to learn, then they continue to elevate their ranks, they continue to go higher. So this was very important understanding, that we do need to understand that how everything is in ranks, everything is in darja. Now let us look at this example which is given to us in the story of Musa. So why don't one of you read 7 by 155, please?
7 by 155. And Moses chose 70 of his people for our place of meeting. When they were seized with violent quaking, he prayed, O my Lord, if it had been your will, you could have destroyed long before both them and me. Would you destroy us for the deeds of the foolish ones among us? This is no more than your trial. By it you cause whom you will to stray, and you lead whom you will into the right path. You are our protector, so forgive us and give us your mercy, for you are the best of those who forgive.
Allah. So Surah Araf, verse 155. It talks about Hazrat Musa alayhi salam and his 70 rijal, 70 men who wanted to see the didar of Allah. All the 70 companions, comprised of men and women, they wanted to see the didar of Allah. And what happens when Allah is giving them didar? They're struck by lightning. Lightning, thunderbolt. And in the story, it seems like when we read the story, it feels like that they became unconscious because they could not tolerate that fire, that light, the thunderbolt they experienced, and they all became kind of unconscious. But in reality, what was happening, that they were seeing the didar of Allah, the highest, most possible didar, the highest perfect manifestation of Allah, the didar of Allah. It was such that it was like a lightning body, and they could not believe, they could not handle, they could not realize. At the station of their akal were shaken. They were shocked to see that perfect manifestation of Allah. And I'm going to read this verse again. And Moses chose from his people 70 men for our appointment. And when the earthquake seized them, he said, My Lord, if you had willed, you could have destroyed them before and me as well. Meaning that, of course, if that didar is so powerful, so strong, that it is not the ability of man to be able to tolerate that didar. These didar are very, very powerful. And he says, Would you destroy us for what the foolish among us have done? This is not but your trial by which you send astray whom you will and guide whom you will. You are our protector, so forgive and have mercy upon us. Meaning that, Allah says in Quran, in another verse, 2 by 210, that do you want Allah to come out of the veil of clouds and take your accounts? People continue to say, no, show us who you are, give us your didar, we are ready. But in reality, are you ready to have that didar, which is like a thundering lightning bolt? And in the story of Musa, that is what is being taught to us, shown to us, that the highest, most didar are such that it is not possible for man to be able to tolerate that didar. At the station of akal, they are able to understand and they are shocked that how can that be? Such didar, and this didar are so powerful as if lightning struck them and they lost consciousness. So in other words, what we are saying, whenever we talk of four elements and when we talk of fire and the lightning, that is the most elevated element and the highest, most didar of Allah is also being mentioned allegorically in the form of a fire or lightning. When we also see here that Musa and the 70 people were with him, it is talking about hududs, hudud-e-din. One can take it as a physical hudud, or we can say that within his soul there were that many hududs who were seeing the didar of Allah at that time. So to summarize, to understand completely, meaning what we are saying, that when a mu'min and salih accepts, becomes mustajib, wants to learn the true knowledge, to do what? Eventually to have the didar of Imam. That is the desire of the mu'min and salih. They start seeking knowledge. They start molding themselves. In other words, they start transforming themselves. They continue to transform. This dense body continues to step by step becomes subtle, gradually, slowly. And then it becomes light, like air, very light, non-visible, transparent. In other words, if I may say, angels-like. Angels do fly, but we cannot see them. But they are there. And then eventually, the stage of fire, which in other words is also called Nurani Badan. In fact, I'm going to talk about all these on Thursday in my session. So I would be repeating it. I'm glad that you all who are listening, they will be able to understand it more because I'll be talking about it in detail of this concept. So actually in reality, when we are talking about anything, Tawilat helps us understand how it relates to us, and for us, how is it a journey which we can climb step by step to elevate ourselves to get to that rank which is Nur, which is one with Imam. That is what Adam did. That is what Musa and his companion wanted to do. And it says very clearly that, would you destroy us for what the foolish among us have done? There are people who are foolish and ignorant, right? But then he says, this is not but your trial. It is a test. It is a test upon each one of us to stay on the path, no matter the test of not being able to understand sometimes, not having the time, not being able to prioritize. But Allah is so merciful, He gives to whom He wills. But for Allah's will to apply to us, to come to us, we do have free will. Those who use their free will to submit themselves to Imam, meaning by becoming mustajib and then seeking knowledge, and then with ibadat, zikr, ilm, giriyauzari, they become so light that they start flying. Eventually comes the darja of Noor, the fire, which gives us heat as well as light. And that light is the circle of mercy. Those who are within that light, it is like being in the circle of mercy, where the Noor-e Rahmat ki barish comes on those mu'mineen, meaning the shower of His mercy comes to those mu'mineen. And due to them being in that circle of mercy, they're able to elevate themselves, continue to go further, and make their souls so light that they can fly. So all this is possible for mu'mineen. We were, in the context of principle of excellence, are talking about the importance of fire. So if anyone has any question, they can ask.
Niamat Ben, I have a question.
Ji.
If you said કે earth ne water, the molding થાય છે like a mustajib, right? So where does this farman of Sultan Muhammad Shah, when he went to Zanzibar, he said, હું ફરમાન કરું છું અને તમારા પથ્થર જેવા દિલને નરમ કરવા આવ્યો છું.
All right, so pathar meaning rock, right? Pathar
Yes,
is
પથ્થર જેવા દિલને નરમ કરવા, you know, mold, melt
yes.
કરવા.
Whenever Imams gives farman, Imam's hidayat is there. And remember, this is the farman to the Jamaat, so Imam is able to see our souls. There are souls who are hard like rock. There is no softness. There is no characteristics of earth. Earth is soft. Because of its softness, it absorbs the water. When we see rains are on the field, on the earth too, and the rain is on the concrete and the rocks too. There is no growth on the rock, but there is a growth in the earth. Why? Because they were soft. It is Imam's mercy. He wills whom, he gives to whom he wills. It is Imam's mercy that with his rahmat, rocks can also actually have a growth. In reality, if I were to give you example, let's take the example of a rock in mountain. Even those rocks do have soul. What is the difference between that soul, which is like rock in a mountain, versus the soul which is in the earth? The difference is that because of the earth's softness, it absorbs the water and there is very quickly growth. And that growth is vegetation, meaning that the soul of the earth, which is a mineral soul, transformed itself very quickly into vegetative soul. Fanayat happened, progress happened. But that rock which is in the mountain also receives the water. But because of its hardness, it takes years and years and years to transform itself into ruby. All this ruby and what else? Lal or Gohar, which are found in the mountain, it is those souls which are transforming consistently, and they become this ruby. So there is a growth too in that rock too. And that is what Imam is saying, that tamara patra jeva dil ne main naram karwa aviye chhe. It is the one who with the free will responds to Imam's farman, and they start melting themselves, preparing themselves with zikr ibadat. What happens that they become from hard like rock, become soft, very soft. And when they become soft, they will quickly absorb the water. When they quickly absorb the water, the next step, then the next step, transformation continues to happen. So that same example we can take when there is a zikr being done and we are doing zikr with really proper attention and dhyan with choksai, right? Some will have tears in their heart, others will have dry eyes like me. So when we have dry eyes, meaning that our heart has become like a rock, there is no softness in our heart. Those who prepare themselves, who work hard, who seek, who do ibadat, zikr, giryazari, ilmu amal, they start making themselves so soft that not a drop is wasted. They absorb everything, literally everything. When they absorb everything, immediately there is a vegetation. When there is a vegetation, that soul continues to elevate. Animal soul, human soul, rational soul, and then that Mu'min Salik who has become Mustajib will continue to elevate themselves to become one with the Imam. So it is a path laid in front of us to know exactly what sickness do we have. Is it having this hard rock like a heart? We need to soften it. Or it is ego saying, I don't know, but I don't want to say I don't know. Or fears from shaitan. Oh, I want to learn, but I cannot learn. I'm just not worthy, I'm not capable. All these are different kinds of tests. Those who overpower with Imam's name, Imam's mercy, overpower these hindrances because it is not in our ability. But when we see the miracles, even in the rock, which is in the mountain, can become a ruby. We are better than that. So all these examples are given to us for us to apply it in ourselves and have this hope, have this love that it is us, it is only us who have the ability to transform ourselves and get to the elevation. Mitti, pani, hawa, aag. Aag, which is nur, which is the excellent status of among the four elements. Ji.
Shukr.
Naveen Sabha, if there is no question, I think छुट्टी करते हैं.
Sorry, my dear, can I have one more question?
जी जी बिल्कुल.
Quickly. Azazel Firasta was fire, and fire is the highest rank. And Adam was the mati, but there was more than mati in him. So if he was the highest rank, was he not able to recognize Adam and bow down unto him?
Very good question, Yasmin. Very good question. So when we study the books of our Dais Hujatan, Sayyidina Mansur al-Yamani talks about Adam and Azazil. Azazil who was made of fire and Adam who was made of mitti. Azazil who was a scholar, who was a learned, who was very close to Imam in his court, he thought himself as a big honored officer, khidmat guzar of Imam. But when Imam selects this Mustajib, who is like no one, he had this test of ego in him. What did he say? Oh no, I am better than him. I am more knowledgeable than him. I am educated. I am scholars. I have so many years of khidmat. My parents were khidmat guzar. Their parents were khidmat guzar. Adam is no one, no history, no family, no nobody. And what did he not do? He did not become Farman Bardar. So in other words, what we are saying that this story teaches us, no matter what happens, we stay humble because one can elevate their ranks to the stage of fire. Even from that rank, one can fall down because it is a ladder. Ladder goes up and ladder comes down. So we do need to stay humble, shukr guzar, no matter what. Even if we elevate ourselves, we always call ourselves nachis, nothing. When we do that, we protect ourselves from bazi of shaitan. Shaitan tells us, oh, you are somebody, you are doing this and you are doing that. You are big shot. And that is it. If we start listening to shaitan, what will happen? So in the story of Azazil, what we learned that he was very learned scholar, but what he did not understand was the farman of the Imam. Imam did ask, I want everyone to bow down to Adam. And he refused. How can one refuse in front of Imam? What did he think of himself? But he thought of himself somebody, that is why he refused Imam. So for us, Ali Allah Madad Farma, Ya Mawla, protect us from tests, any kind of test. And if you test us, Mawla, give us your mother to pass those tests. We want to stay humble, and we need to remember ourselves. We stay always nachis. We stay always humble. Very good question. If I may add, which is we forget that Adam, who started as Mustajib, but when Allah said to bow down to Adam, was he mitti at that time or was he fire too? He
Fire
was one
too.
fire, yes, which Azazil failed to see. If Imam is saying bow down to him, Ji Khuda hai, should be the response of a moment. But Azazil could not do that. He saw himself as superior, better than others. And that is it. As soon as we think of ourselves something, Ali Allah Madad Farma, it is only the Imam who is the Insan Kamil, who is the perfect man. We are nachis, we are no one, we are in mercy of Imam, protecting ourselves from tests, staying humble, always humble. So this is a very important lesson we have learned today, because every time when we hear the story of Adam, we think, oh, he's of matti. He appeared like matti. He was seen as no one, nobody. But in reality, in his batin, he had reached higher than Azazil. Azazil was expected to bow down to him, and Azazil could not tolerate that. He could not accept that. This is the beauty of asking good question. Thank you.
Subhanallah. Any other questions, anyone? Friend just commented about Garbavali has the same explanation about these elements, and it was very helpful what you explained.
Shukran, Mawla.
Shukran.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Yali Madad.
Yali Madad, Yali Madad.
Yali Madad.
I want to acknowledge, Karima, that you kept your camera open. Thank you for doing that. Yali Madad, Yali Madad.
Yali Madad.
Yali Madad, Yali Madad.